Okay guys, welcome to part 2 of project 3 demo video. In the last video you saw me do swatches for the project. Yours would be 6 swatches for each color study. So you'd have 6 of your chromatic grays, which were these ones, 6 of your muted color, 6 of your prismatic color, and then you would do 6 of the combined saturation, which we covered in the last video, which would be a combination of all 3 of these. You'd choose 2 from your chromatic study swatches, you choose 2 from your mid-tone swatches, your muted colors, and you choose 2 from your prismatic colors, your highly saturated colors, and then you would have your combined saturation swatches. So I'm gonna put this to the side for a second so I can show you the next step. So we did this in the beginning when we were first starting this project. We made boxes, 5x7 boxes, which are gonna be your final collage boxes. So I'm just gonna measure in from the inch here, an inch from the side, and measure then 5 inches in. And then my next box will start an inch over from that, and then we'll measure 5 inches this way, just like that. So then that would be the width of both my boxes. Then I'm gonna measure 2 inches down for each of these. 2 inches down from the top, 2 inches up from the bottom. So we get an idea of where our box is gonna stop and start. And then this should be, we're gonna make it 7 inches, so this should be 7 inches right here. Yes, it is. Okay, great. So then I would measure 2 inches down again over here, just so that we have an idea of the points in our lines are nice and straight. So 2 inches here, and 2 inches down here. So essentially you're making 6 dots for each box. So then I would be able to go straight across here, line it up, make sure it lines up with the 5-inch mark, and we're going to then draw a nice straight line right across, just like that. And then I'll draw a line down. Right through here. Just like this. Lining my ruler up. And then draw a line this way. That, and then draw a line down here, just like this. Okay, so then you have one of your boxes, and then you would do the same thing over here, or you can basically just extend from that point on. You can start it here and just go right over to it, and then you can draw a line down. And then another line down. And then another line across this way, so that you get 2 5x7s, essentially. Just like that, so you have 2 boxes. Okay, so then, once you have that, what you would do then is take your swatches, and you're gonna look, we'll start with the chromatic grays. So you would choose one of the swatches from your chromatic grays to paint the background of your first collage box. So say that color that I picked then would be this pink color. So then I would paint the background of this one, which would be my chromatic grays. And what you can do is just label chromatic gray here at the top so that you remember. And this can be your muted color. And then what you would do on the back is replicate the same two squares, and then you would write prismatic color and combined saturation. So then you would have a total of 4. So we're gonna start over here. So then you would paint this, the background of the swatch that you have here. And then, so I'll go ahead and do that for you, just so you can see. I'll have to make a little bit more of that paint. So before we had used the flame red, and we mixed a bunch of white into it. So, we'll do that again. Flame red, a bunch of white. And I'll show you on here. Flame red and a bunch of white here. And then we'll mix these two together and get roughly the same color that we had last time. Put a little bit more white in it. You want to make sure that you're getting something that's at least mostly close to your original swatch. So this is slightly darker, but we're gonna fix it and we'll put some more white in there. You can see I'm mixing here, just the top of my palette. So, okay, once I have this swatch, say this is the color that I choose to be my background, I'm gonna go ahead and paint the background. Now, if you want, you can tape up these boxes to make them nice and neat. I would suggest doing that. For time reasons, I'm not gonna do it with you guys right now, but I would suggest doing that so you get nice, neat lines here. I'm just going very close to the edge here, making sure I get nice, clean lines, since I do not have tape on my boxes. Nice, even application of paint. Get nice and close to that edge. And don't be afraid to use like a little bit of water to make your paint spread a little bit. You don't want your paint to become translucent, but you do want to use a little water because gouache is kind of a sticky paint, so it will stay exactly where you put it if you don't put a little bit of water in there. So, painting the background. And I'm just going to show you this with one single collage because essentially you're going to repeat the same process over and over again for your other 4. So, let me get this painted for you. And then this way the video won't be too long. Try to make this as concise as possible for you. Okay. So then, after I did this swatch, I would have 5 more chromatic gray swatches to choose from to do my shapes, which will be the next step of this. So, I'll paint the background here, and then what I would do is, and you can choose to paint all the backgrounds of your studies first, and then go do the shape study part, which is totally fine. That might make a lot of sense to do it that way. I'm just gonna do it where I do one box for you because I'm not gonna do all 4 collages for you right now. Okay, so here's my muted, my chromatic gray collage box. That is the background color. So now, because I didn't make another chromatic gray swatch in video 1, I'm gonna go ahead and make another swatch just down here so that I can show you how to cut things out. So for this one, I'm gonna use the ash blue, excuse me. And I'm gonna put a little bit of on here, and I'm gonna mix it with white because that was the mixer that I'm using. So I would stick, once you choose what your mixer is for that study, stick to that. So because I chose white for my chromatic grays, all the colors that I mix for my chromatic grays will be mixed with white. You can change it up when you move on to your muted colors if you want to mix it with something else. That's absolutely fine, but just stay consistent in terms of each study. So I'm mixing a tiny bit of the ash blue into my white. Tiny, tiny, tiny bit. Just like taking this little bit here and mixing it right into my white. All right, so I get a nice muted color. So I'm gonna make a nice chromatic gray, excuse me. So this will be then, I'll pretend that these two chromatic gray swatches are on the same thing, even though they're not. So we'll make this will be your other chromatic gray swatch. Just so I can show you how to cut these shapes out. All right, getting this down. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get the paint on there in a nice solid fashion, but just edges wise, doesn't have to be perfect. It's just painting a swatch. They're supposed to be like this. Just kind of, and just hold the paper as you do it, you know, because it will wiggle around. Okay, so here's my other chromatic gray swatch. So say this is one of them. So this would be one of the 5 remaining swatches then that I would cut shapes out of. So important thing to remember with this project is that you're choosing 5 shapes. So the 5 shapes that you choose to your chromatic gray will be repeated in your muted color study, then they will be repeated in your prismatic color study, and then they will be repeated in your saturation, your combined saturation study. So whatever shapes you choose, they will just repeat themselves in each study, but just the color will change. So that's the whole point of the exercise, so you can see what the shapes and the different colors will do. So I'm just gonna let this dry really quick. It's still a tiny bit tacky, so it dries very quickly. So what I would do to practice cutting out your shapes is take a scrap piece of paper. So I'm just gonna use this scrap piece of paper, and I would practice drawing out a shape that I want, right? So say it's some sort of triangle shape like this, right? And you can use your ruler to do this too. Make it nice and straight. You're gonna take your X-Acto knife. Now be really careful with these guys, they're very sharp. And you don't wanna wind up cutting yourself because it really does hurt. Take the blade off. Now, when you look at your X-Acto knife, this straight edge is the top. This diagonal edge is the blade. So you're gonna wanna hold your X-Acto knife like a pencil, and you can put your finger, the top of your pointer finger, on the top of the blade. And then you're gonna proceed to cut it out, and just go really slowly. Applying pressure, but just very slowly, because you don't want it to rip the paper, because X-Acto knives are kind of sticky in the sense they want to rip the paper. They don't go as smoothly as scissors. So you'll just lightly do this and just practice using it. You don't even have to cut out the whole shape, just practice doing it so that you can get an idea of what it's like. And rotate your paper so that it's easier for you to do, because your X-Acto knife isn't gonna be as super flexible with you. So you're gonna wanna rotate your paper, especially so that you're not cutting directly into your lap and wind up slicing your leg or something. We don't want that. So just be careful as you go and take it really slowly. And sort of creep around your shape. And then you'll see it starts to pop out. And now I'm gonna choose to do this. So it'll be like cutting out one side. I'm gonna choose to do this on my swatch now that it's dry, just so you guys can see. So I'm gonna copy that shape that I did, the V shape. So that would be one of my shapes then that I would copy onto every single swatch that I did. So I'm just gonna use my ruler for this since we wanna make it look nice for the collage. And just, right, make a little thingy. Move in, make a little thingy. Oh, that's too narrow. Something like that. And just make sure you're doing your lines nice and light, not like I just did, because erasing can be kind of a pain. Okay, so say this is my shape, right? Get end at the same spot. There we go. And if you do make a mistake like that and you do get like a little bit of whatever going on, you can always just repaint over and then redraw the swatch. I mean, redraw your shape. So this will be one of my shapes. I'm going to move this out of the way so I don't cut onto that. And again, holding your X-Acto knife like a pencil. And because this is a straight edge thing, you can go ahead and use your ruler if you want as a guide so that your X-Acto knife doesn't go everywhere on you. It also makes it a little faster too, if you want. But for curved shapes, that would be a different approach. You wouldn't want to use a ruler for that, obviously. So then I would go down here, rotate my paper, cut out a nice line. And because I'm using a ruler for this, it's gonna come out nice and neat, hopefully. Moving it like a pencil, move nice and slowly. And we'll do in the inside corner and rotate as you go. Make sure that you're not pointing this X-Acto knife directly at yourself or cutting somewhere where your fingers will be involved. Don't go ahead and put your fingertips right here while you're cutting. You don't want to cut yourself. It really does hurt. I promise you, you don't want to do that. It doesn't feel good. It might sound like I'm being a little dramatic, but I promise it's not a great feeling. So we're gonna try to minimize all that and protect you guys. All right, so then your shape would just pop right out. And if you do find that there's like little tiny edges that you're just not super happy with, like if there's like a little fuzz at the end of your shape, go ahead and just take a scissor. I want you to use the X-Acto knife for this part, just because they're so small and it's hard to get that detail. Go ahead and just trim if you have to. If there's like a little tiny bit of whatever going on and you want it out of there to make your shape nice and clean, you can go ahead and take your scissor to do that. Don't go in there with an X-Acto knife because you probably will cut yourself if you try to move that close to it. Okay, so this would then essentially be my first shape. And then at that point, what you would do is also, it's important to know, I would cut out all my shapes for the first one and then decide on an orientation before you glue them down. Because whatever that orientation is, it's gonna be the same for all your other collage studies. So then what I would do is take my glue stick, and also you're gonna wanna do this on not your final paper with the glue. Get that scrap paper back again and just apply the glue on a scrap paper. This way you can go straight over the edges of the shape and not have to worry about getting glue on something that you care about. So go ahead and do that. Apply a nice even layer of glue because you want it to come out nice. I'm gonna leave my scrap paper here because we're gonna need it in a second. And then I'm gonna decide that this is the orientation that I like. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue that shape down. And then what I would do is just take the scrap paper or another piece of paper and just kind of press down nicely. Don't use your hand because you may have paint or extra stuff on it. You can see even as I'm touching this piece of paper, there's scuff coming off, so you don't wanna do that. And just lightly press, don't rub because that might smudge the paint. Just lightly press onto there so that you have a nice application. So then that would be it. And then you would repeat that. This is the top technically. So that would be it. And that you repeat that with the other shapes and then with your other collages. All right? And then the finished product you will see in the PowerPoint that I posted on Blackboard. You can see what the finished product would look like. Okay? Thanks, guys.